What if humanity's greatest leap was never real? What if the moment the world celebrated as proof that we could step beyond our planet was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? For more than half a century, people have asked the same question. Did the United States really land men on the moon? Or was it the greatest deception in history? In July 1969, the world watched as grainy black and white images flickered on their television screens. Neil Armstrong descended the ladder of the lunar module and declared, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." More than 600 million people, nearly 1/5 of humanity at the time, witnessed the event. It was the climax of the space race, the moment America declared victory over the Soviet Union. But almost as soon as it happened, whispers of doubt began to spread. Why? Because for some, the whole story seemed too extraordinary to believe. The moon was almost 400,000 kilometers away, a deadly vacuum with no air, no protection, and temperatures that swing from scorching heat to freezing cold. Could 1960s technology really send fragile humans across that void, keep them alive, and bring them home? To skeptics, the answer was no. In 1974, a man named Bill Kaysing published a book titled We Never Went to the Moon. He was not a scientist, but his claims ignited a fire. He suggested that NASA, desperate to beat the Soviets, staged the entire landing in a studio. According to him, the Apollo missions were nothing more than propaganda, filmed on Earth and broadcast as truth. His words resonated with a public already disillusioned by Vietnam and the Watergate scandal. If the government could lie about one thing, why not this? The so-called evidence piled up. The American flag appeared to wave as astronauts planted it in the lunar soil. But how could a flag ripple in the wind if there is no air on the moon? The photographs showed shadows pointing in different directions, as though multiple studio lights were used. And what about the stars? In every image from the lunar surface, the night sky is empty. No stars, just blackness. For conspiracy theorists, this was proof that a backdrop was used. There were other questions too. Why were the videos so perfectly framed if cameras were strapped to the astronauts' chests? Why did the lunar module leave no massive blast crater beneath its engine? And perhaps the most damning suspicion of all, if the moon landings were real, why did the missions suddenly stop in 1972? Why, for over 50 years, has humanity never returned? To many, it was simple. Because we had never been there at all. The idea spread far beyond fringe communities. Television programs in the 1970s and 80s presented the conspiracy as a real possibility. Some even claimed that legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick had been secretly hired to direct the fake moon footage. After his groundbreaking work on 2001, A Space Odyssey, the theory was irresistible. America, desperate to outshine the Soviets, turned to Hollywood. Yet, while the doubts grew louder, scientists, engineers, and even rival nations pointed to evidence that couldn't be ignored. They reminded us that every Apollo mission left behind instruments on the lunar surface. Among them were retroreflectors, panels of mirrors, designed to bounce laser beams back to Earth. To this day, observatories fire lasers at those reflectors and receive signals in return. They are still sitting there, half a century later, silently proving that humans really were on the moon. And what about the mysterious flag, caught in photographs at strange angles? In reality, the flagpole was designed with a horizontal bar to hold it outstretched. When the astronauts twisted it into the soil, the fabric rippled and stayed that way because there was no air to smooth it. It wasn't waving, it was frozen in motion. The shadows that seemed inconsistent, they were the result of uneven ground and perspective. On the moon, with no atmosphere to diffuse light, shadows look sharper and stranger than they do on Earth. A single sun can cast shadows at different angles when the terrain is sloped. The missing stars? They were there, of course, but invisible to the cameras. The surface of the moon is brilliantly lit by the sun. To properly expose the astronauts and the lander, the cameras used short shutter speeds. Dim stars simply didn't appear. If you take a photograph of a brightly lit subject on Earth at night, the same effect happens. The stars vanish. As for the lack of a blast crater beneath the lunar module, the explanation is simple. The descent engine was throttled back during the final seconds of landing. In the vacuum of space, exhaust gases expand quickly and don't carve out giant holes. Instead, the engine simply blew away a thin layer of dust. Photographs clearly show the scoured surface beneath the lander's feet. But skeptics asked, if the Soviets were watching so closely, why didn't they call out the Americans as frauds? The answer reveals more than any photograph could. The Soviet Union tracked every Apollo mission with its own radar and radio equipment. They knew exactly when the rockets launched, where they traveled, and when they entered lunar orbit. If the US had faked it, the Soviets, locked in a fierce Cold War rivalry, would have exposed the lie instantly. Instead, they congratulated NASA. The silence of America's greatest rival spoke volumes. And then there are the rocks. The Apollo astronauts brought back more than 380 kilograms of lunar material, dust, pebbles, and boulders. These samples have been studied by scientists all over the world, not just in the United States. They are unlike anything found on Earth. Their composition, their isotopes, even the way they were formed all prove they originated in an environment without atmosphere and with weaker gravity. Soviet missions also brought back smaller samples, and they matched. No film studio on Earth could create such evidence. Decades later, the proof grew stronger. In 2009, NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter began circling the Moon. Its cameras photographed the Apollo landing sites in incredible detail, the lunar modules, the scientific instruments, even the trails left by astronauts, boots and rover. Wheels are all visible from orbit. Anyone can look at these images today. The artifacts are still there, exactly where history says they should be. So why does the conspiracy theory endure? Perhaps because it feeds a deeper fascination. We want to believe in secrets, in mysteries hidden behind curtains of power. It's easier to imagine a staged performance than to grasp the staggering challenge of what humanity accomplished in 1969. Building rockets taller than skyscrapers, guiding them across 250,000 miles of space, landing on another world, and bringing everyone back alive. Such achievements feel almost impossible. And when something feels impossible, some will always choose doubt over wonder. But the evidence is overwhelming. The moon landings were not illusions. They were real, they were dangerous, and they were extraordinary. 12 men walked across the lunar surface. They planted experiments, collected rocks, and looked back at the Earth as a fragile blue sphere hanging in the void. They showed us what humanity could do when it dared to dream without limits. And yet, one question still lingers. If we achieved so much half a century ago, why have we not returned? Why has no human set foot on the moon since 1972? The answer lies not in technology, but in politics, money, and shifting priorities. But the mystery keeps the story alive. People wonder, they doubt, and in doing so, they keep talking about the moon. The truth is this: the Apollo missions were real. The evidence is etched into the rocks, reflected back by mirrors, and photographed from orbit. But perhaps the greater mystery is not whether we went, but when we will go again. Humanity's first small steps were only the beginning. The next giant leap still awaits.